Video 4 of a 5-part series, the story of us, context of how we got to be where we are. This is going to be an exciting one because we're finally getting into the health journey, which means the homestead journey for us. In our last video, we talked about our time in Honduras and how I was put in charge of the farm and for the first time had to take care of 1,200 Cornish cross chickens, knowing nothing, but got them to the end very successfully. And then we came back to continue that farm story. We came back from Honduras sort of ready and willing, perhaps, to get our own. But who's that? People say, how, Rebecca, have you gone along with Justin's idea to farm? Well, whose idea was it, Miss Thing?
It's always been my idea. It's never really been his. So all those people out there judging Justin, it's not him, it's me.
I'm not dragging her along.
No.
She dragged me along.
I pretty much, basically what has happened is I have come up with some great ideas, and then he's the one who actually makes them happen.
I liked the ideas, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't do anything I don't like.
He's not like, I'm not dragging him along. This is definitely a mutual thing. Like, hey, what happens if we did this? So I think being in Honduras, when we were in Honduras one time collecting eggs together, because there was some layer chickens. They had another house for layers. And again, they had a little bit more area, and it was a different house setup, but they, again, were locked in the house. But it was set up better than the Cornish cross side, I would say, where they actually got sunlight and fresh air and stuff like that. But we were collecting eggs, and I was like, we can do this. This isn't that hard. Like, we have land, like, because we were living here. Why aren't we doing chickens, So that was kind of like a big spark for us, if you will, of like, let's do this at home. And so then we came back, and then we did get pregnant with Jonah, and we then also had foster kids living in our house, and it was a short-term foster gig that turned into a little bit longer than they had originally thought. So they thought it was only going to be a couple weeks, and it ended up being like 5-ish, 6 maybe months total. So, and then I was pregnant with Jonah, and we had a garden that year. And then because I was pregnant and going to have a baby soon, we just did respite, which is where we just did like weekends for people who needed help. Like a place for foster kids to go for just the weekend or a short trip or whatever. So that's what we did after that. And then we ended up having Jonah in December. And before we had Jonah is when we got the chickens. Uno, dos, cuatro.
Yeah, I would say...
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
I would say we came back from Honduras willing to farm. We had collected eggs together, had a good time together there, and we were willing to farm. We had, when we came back, we had done some gardening, or did we do some gardening before we left?
We did one garden.
So we did some gardening. We had already
before
been
and
doing
after.
some gardening for whatever reason. But I think our big move into farming ourselves was when we were at church, and I think one of us said we should get some chickens. And no lie, within 5 minutes, somebody came by and said, would any of you guys happen to want some chickens? And we ended up going to get those chickens.
It was November.
And
we went and got the chickens.
We got 4 of them, and so in the Honduras spirit, we called them Uno, Dos, Tres, and Cuatro.
Yeah. And
within 2 weeks, they were all dead. I don't need to get into the long story short of that. It was harder.
It was a lot harder
growing
than we thought.
your own than if you're walking into a system and all you're doing is taking over. But to develop your own, we struggled just as much as anybody.
Right. We walked into a system in Honduras. It was already there in place. We had someone guiding us. And we came home and we thought, we can do this. How hard can it be? Well, it was a lot harder than we thought. I remember when you came up here, because I was pretty pregnant. Like, I was weeks away from my due date.
Yeah.
And you said, Uno and Dos are gone. And I was like, what? And he's like, they flew out the top. And I was like...
I didn't know chickens can fly that well.
What? And then we did have a neighborhood dog. We did have a neighborhood dog. And we're pretty sure that he got them.
The chickens came... You must have searched on Amazon or something. You got some books from Elliot Coleman on gardening.
Yes.
You were going to have a CSA, which is like a market garden.
Yes.
My mentor, Steve Meeks, had given me the book by Joel Salatin. I'd never heard of Joel Salatin before, Salad Bar Beef, and Steve had taught me how to buy a steer in the spring, raise it through the fall, and make $1,000 on it. And I used what Steve taught me and what Joel Salatin taught me in Salad Bar Beef about moving cows every day, and I did that for that entire year, and we made some money. We actually made some money on the cows. The CSA thing, you got it started, you got pregnant, couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, so
I had to finish it off.
Pregnant with Josiah, so that was really when the farm took off. Is Jonah? So when Jonah was a baby, is when I learned about like raw milk. He was like 6 months to a year old is when I read a book and they were talking about drinking raw milk, and I was like, where would I even find raw milk? And we were going to our friend's house. We had some really good friends, and she was the one who had given me the book, and I said, but what about this? What about raw milk? Like, where'd you find it? And she had friends across the nation that had people that they knew that they could get raw milk from, and I was like, but where do we find it? And so she was like, well, this is what she said. Well, you guys have all that land. Why don't you get a milk cow? And that was really when I would say that dream was born for me. I was like, yeah, this makes so much sense. And I mean, of course, he's like, he grew up with cows. So he's like, you don't just get a cow. Like, there's a lot to it. He knew a little bit more of like what there was to that.
Especially
whereas
a milk cow.
I was like, let's just do it. And he's like, wait a minute, this is too much. And so that was 2008. Is when I had that, like, let's get a milk cow. And so we got our milk cow in 2014. So there was
gratification there for you.
It was a long while. But we did start doing the steers and selling grass-fed beef.
And we had the CSA,
which was really
1 or
good.
2 years.
We had the
one
CSA
season.
2 seasons, I want to say.
Yeah.
So in this time, Justin was still working for his dad. So he started working for his dad when he was 16, and he was still doing the retainer wires for his dad's company. And that was how we were able to pay some of our bills.
It was pretty much an entrepreneurial venture because I was working by myself. I could work whenever I wanted. It felt like I was my own boss. So.
Yeah.
And it paid well for the amount of money I get. It was not full-time, but it was part-time.
It paid well for the amount of time you spent.
Yeah, and effort into it. So, yeah. And we lived frugally at the time. So our income, we had stopped the selling of the mountain boardings. We had lived frugally.
No, we were still selling mountain boards, but it's not. We weren't putting a lot of time into it.
Well, fast forwarding it. I'm fast forwarding it almost to the Lyme disease.
Yeah, so it was 2010 is when we got rid of mountain board shelter.
So we were making money with the CSA, with and then with the beef cows, and then but mostly living frugally. And then we were on a family walk, and I got struck with pain in my groin area, and I just thought I pulled a growing muscle. But long story short, it never went away. And thousands and thousands of dollars later,
$10,000,
tens of thousands of dollars later, and months, if not, it was months.
It was 18 months.
Okay, year and a half. Finally figured out it was chronic Lyme disease, and we even got the blood test, and blood test was positive, which is not always positive. And went through a number. We had to. You can talk to them about if you want all the different things I did for it, but we
did a lot of different ways to treat Lyme. And if you know anything about Lyme disease, you know that just because it worked for one person doesn't mean it works for another. And it seems like every person's case of chronic Lyme disease is very different.
Yeah.
And so
for me, it was the growing pain, but then it extended down to my foot.
Muscular pain.
And then it was brain fog. It was tired. It was lack of depression.
He was taking naps for like 2 hours a day. He would sleep 12 hours at night.
So basically, I think my immune system finally gave way to it because we think I probably got Lyme disease way before. Because I can remember actually a tick bite that was inflamed and red, and we didn't think much of it. I thought it was a spider bite.
Yeah, so in this time actually between Honduras and Lyme disease, that time of our lives, he actually went to the doctor for the first time. He had a spider bite on his arm that had become infected. It wasn't MRSA, but it was like, the doctors were concerned that it could be that. It was not that. but that was like literally the only time he had ever gone to the doctor, and I was actually getting better, feeling better in general. So, and then he had this groin pain that turned into, you were 34, I remember, and you said to me in the bedroom, you said, I feel like I'm spending so much money, but I feel so bad. And like, and you were basically saying to me, like, I feel guilty that I'm spending this much money. Like, I'm taking money from the family. And you felt bad about that. And I was like, no, like, you're 34. Like, I mean, you had times where you felt like you needed to literally sit, like, you didn't think you would be able to function in years to come because of how bad you felt right then. And so, it was just a really dark time. I mean, we did antibiotics, we did herbals, we did garlic, we've done colloidal silver. We've done all these things, and while they've helped, they haven't necessarily gotten you back to 100% of what you were.
Yeah.
You are very functional. We still deal with things, and we're still trying to figure out what is the best way to heal that Lyme disease, but it was really scary.
Now it manifests in lower back tensity, foot pain. I can't stand very long. But, the depression and the brain fog is gone, and I'm obviously very physically capable, but I think I feel like I'm older than I am just watching the older people, get up and they're kind of sore, That's kind of how I feel after sitting for a while. But anyway, it was so dire that I figured I was going to die.
It was a really dark time. There was feelings of Justin feeling like he would succumb to this, like that this was how he was going to die. And he was nervous for leaving me with children alone. And, it was a really, really hard time for not knowing how to treat it and what the outcome was going to be of this. Yeah. And so it was really, really difficult time. And in fact, I became pregnant with Gideon before we even knew it was Lyme disease. And then I remember thinking like, because I knew Lyme disease was very serious. And so then when we actually got the diagnosis, I was like, oh dear, like, I don't know if we would have had a fourth child if we would have gotten the diagnosis sooner. And I'm very thankful for Gideon, and he has been a huge bright spot in our life. So it was a really scary time, though. It was a really, like he was not able to work as much, and our bills were enormous, and it was just really it was. And
we're
going
to talk about how we got out of that mess in the next video, but that. Going into the Lyme disease, we had already started our health journey. I think our health pretty much began with our farm journey because, you got convicted about the way we're eating. You started becoming aware of
additives in the food
and the importance of organic and basically when we ran out of conventional milk, you'd replace it with organic milk, and we transitioned that way. So we were already eating organic going into Lyme, but we then, because of the Lyme, experimented with different kinds of diets.
Like paleo.
We were vegetarian before.
We weren't
and we
100%
felt like that was
vegetarian.
But that was because of we didn't have the money.
Right.
Or we didn't want to have the money. We didn't afford it. We didn't afford it. I'm afraid it might have been one of the stressors that messed with me, because I feel like I crave and want meat and animal fats. You maybe not as much.
Yeah.
But I think it was part of a contribution to us going down, because it wasn't like a thoughtful vegetarian where we were making sure we got our proteins in.
No, we were just making sure that we had food.
We just made sure we had money in the bank and food on the table.
Yeah.
And you do what you got to do. But that's a perfect incident. And in the long run, you pay for it.
Yeah.
And it could have been part of what brought on Lyme disease.
Yeah. I wish that now.
So when we got Lyme, it's like paleo.
We did paleo. You did like a carbohydrate test where you were seeing if you were carbohydrate intolerant, and we were just really trying to figure out what was wrong. We had made all these dietary changes in this Lyme disease journey that was 18 months. I kind of look at our Lyme disease journey as 18 months long, because that was like from the moment he got sick until the moment we found out that what it was that was causing this was 18 months. And I remember just thinking, like, we've done all the things, you know, that all the health people out there, we had gone to a doctor who was a naturopathic doctor, and he was really all about the paleo diet, and we took the things that he thought we should take, and so we did that, and we were doing all the things. Like, Justin was very disciplined, and he wasn't getting better. And I remember thinking to myself, this is more than just, it's not as simple as we hoped was going to be. And so that was when I was like, this is something that's like, it's more than just a light issue. Like, this is more serious. And then when we got the Lyme disease diagnosis, it was like, oh no, this is awful. And it was really scary time.
Yeah. So we're in and there. We're in and that, like, that was like, what in the heck we're going to do? We're spending more money than we're making. Not sure how much longer I'm going to live. It's like a really dire situation. Nothing seems to be working. What are we going to do? And that was a couple years in our life. We're going to talk about how we got from there to you guys, and how we wouldn't have you guys if it wasn't for this and all that we've talked about. And so we're very thankful, actually, for what has happened, because now we have this. So let's talk about that in the next video. See you guys then.